The morning Conrad Hale walked out of the federal courthouse in downtown Chicago, he was already thinking about the bourbon he'd pour when he got home. Not because he needed it. Because he'd earned it, 41 years of practicing law. And this was the one he'd remember. A class action suit against Meridian Logistics that had dragged on for 6 years, eaten through 3 associate attorneys, and nearly cost him his marriage, the second one. The jury had come back in 4 hours. 4 hours. His co-counsel had cried in the hallway. Conrad didn't cry. He shook hands, thanked the bailiff by name, and walked out into the October air like a man who had simply done what he came to do. The courthouse steps were wide and pale in the afternoon sun, TV cameras clustered near the bottom. His paralegal, a young woman named Britt, was already fielding calls on her phone 10 feet behind him, her voice bright and professional. His driver, a man named Saul, who had worked for him for 11 years, was somewhere around the corner with the black Lincoln. Conrad paused at the top of the step. He set his briefcase down for a moment, just a moment, and breathed. The city smelled like exhaust and October leaves and the faint sweetness of a pretzel cart somewhere down the block. He was 63 years old. His lower back hurt. His left knee had been giving him trouble since August. He had a 6 p.m. reservation at Renzo's that he was already looking forward to. He picked up his briefcase and started down the steps. That was when he saw the boy. He was sitting on the concrete ledge at the far edge of the steps, away from the cameras, away from the small crowd of reporters and curious onlookers. Small, maybe 6, maybe 7. Hard to tell. He had on a blue jacket that was a size too big, the sleeves swallowing his wrists, and a pair of sneakers that had seen better days. His laces were tied, though, neatly. Someone had taught him that. What stopped Conrad wasn't the boy's age or his size or the fact that he was alone. What stopped him was the way the boy was looking at him. Not the way kids usually looked at men in suits coming out of courthouses, with mild curiosity or total indifference. This boy was watching him the way you watch something you've been waiting for. Fixed. Alert. Like he'd been sitting there deciding something. Conrad slowed. The boy stood up. He was short enough that the top of his head barely cleared the concrete ledge behind him. He took 2 steps toward Conrad and then stopped, as if he'd rehearsed how far he was allowed to go. "Sir," he said. Conrad stopped walking. Around him, the city kept moving. Somewhere behind him, Britt was still on her phone. A camera crew was packing up equipment. A cab honked somewhere on Michigan Avenue. "Sir," the boy said again. His voice was quiet, but it didn't waver. "I need to tell you something about your car." Conrad looked at him for a moment. Then he looked around, half expecting to see a parent, a guardian, someone who belonged to this child. There was no one. Just the boy, standing there with his too big jacket and his careful laces, looking up at Conrad like the weight of what he was carrying was almost too much for one small person. "What about my car?" Conrad said. "The black one," the boy said, "with the chrome on the side. I saw a man go under it." Conrad felt something shift in his chest. Not panic, not yet. Something quieter than that. A stillness, the kind that comes right before something important. "You saw a man go under my car," Conrad repeated slowly. The boy nodded. "He was there for a long time. Too long. My grandma always says when someone's under a car too long, something's wrong." He paused. She used to work at a garage. Conrad studied him. The boy's eyes were steady, dark brown, serious in a way that didn't belong on a face that young. "Where's your grandmother now?" Conrad asked. "The hospital. She had her hip fixed." The boy said it the way kids say practical things, plainly, without drama. "I came with my uncle. He's on the phone over there." He pointed vaguely toward the street without looking away from Conrad. "He's been on the phone a long time." Conrad followed the gesture. Across the plaza, near the concrete barriers at the street's edge, a young man in a gray hoodie was pacing with a phone pressed to his ear. He wasn't looking in their direction. Conrad looked back at the boy. "What did the man look like?" he asked. "The one you saw under the car." The boy thought for a second. Not the way kids think when they're making something up, slow and drifting, buying time. He thought the way someone thinks when they're being careful to get it right. "He was tall," the boy said, "taller than you. He had on dark pants and a green jacket. Not a bright green. More like." He looked around, then pointed at a trash can across the walkway. "Like that color, the lid." Conrad glanced at the trash can. Olive green. Military surplus shade. "Did you see his face? Some of it. He had a beard, short one, and a tattoo on his neck." The boy reached up and touched his own neck, just below the right ear. "Right here." It looked like a bird, maybe a crow. Conrad was quiet for a moment. "And you saw him go under the car," he said. "Yes, sir. The black one parked on Garfield Lane, around the corner. He was there for maybe 10 minutes. Then he walked away fast. He didn't look back." The boy paused again. "That's what my grandma says, too." When someone walks away fast and doesn't look back, they did something. Conrad stood very still. In 41 years of law, he had learned to read people. Witnesses. Defendants. Opposing counsel trying to hide something behind a poker face. He had sat across from liars, who were convincing, and truth-tellers, who weren't. And he'd learned, slowly and painfully over decades, to tell the difference. He was looking at a truth-teller. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elliot," the boy said. "Elliot James Booker." "Elliot," Conrad said. "I need you to stay right here for a minute. Can you do that?" Elliot nodded. He put his hands in the pockets of his too big jacket and stood there like he planned to stay for as long as it took. Conrad called his head of security, a man named Victor Reese who had worked private protection for 15 years and didn't rattle easily. He answered on the second ring. "Reese, I need you at the car. Garfield Lane. Don't touch anything. Don't let Saul get a bomb tech if you have to do it quietly." Conrad paused. "And do it now." There was a brief silence on the other end. "Then copy that. 2 minutes." Conrad hung up. He turned back to Elliot, who was watching him with those serious eyes. "You did the right thing," Conrad said. "Coming to tell me." Elliot looked down at his shoes for a moment, then back up. "I wasn't sure you'd listen," he said. "Most people don't listen to kids." That landed somewhere Conrad didn't expect. He had a granddaughter. 7 years old, lived in Cincinnati with his daughter Pam. He saw her 4, maybe 5 times a year. She said things sometimes that stopped him cold, the kind of pure, uncomplicated truth that adults spend years learning to talk around. He thought of her now, standing in Pam's kitchen doorway last Thanksgiving, telling him that his face looked tired. He crouched down so he was closer to Elliot's level. His knee protested. He ignored it. "I listened," Conrad said. Elliot looked at him for a moment, then gave a small nod. It wasn't the nod of a relieved child. It was the nod of someone who had done a job and was waiting to see if it would count. Conrad's phone buzzed. He stood, wincing slightly, and answered. It was Reese. "Sir." A pause that lasted 1 second too long. "You need to not go near this vehicle. I'm calling CPD." Conrad's hand tightened on the phone. "Confirmed?" "Confirmed. Under the rear axle. We've got a device." Conrad was quiet for 3 full seconds. The October air felt different, colder. His bourbon, his reservation at Renzo's, the neat weight of a winning verdict, all of it suddenly very far away. "All right," he said. "Call it in." He hung up. He looked at Elliot. The boy was watching him. He hadn't moved an inch. Conrad thought about what could have happened if he'd walked down those steps 30 seconds faster, climbed into that car, told Saul to drive. He thought about the courthouse steps behind him, the reporters, the peoples on the sidewalk. He thought about Pam in Cincinnati, who would have gotten a phone call. "Elliot," he said. His voice came out steadier than he expected. "Your grandmother raised someone very brave." Elliot blinked. For the first time, something shifted behind those serious eyes. Not quite a smile, but the shape of one trying to form. "She's going to be okay," he said. "The doctor said so." "I'm glad," Conrad said, and he meant it in a way he hadn't meant simple words in a long time. The next hour moved in the particular way that emergencies move, fast in some places, frozen in others. 2 Chicago PD cruisers arrived on Garfield Lane. The device was real. The bomb squad came. Reese kept the perimeter quiet and away from media. Conrad gave a statement in the courthouse lobby to a detective named Flores, who had the practiced calm of someone who'd done this hundreds of times and let nothing show. When Conrad described what the boy had told him, Flores looked up from her notepad. "How old is the child?" she asked. 7, maybe 6. Conrad paused. He was specific. Olive green jacket, short beard, tattoo below the right ear, crow or bird shape. Flores wrote it down without comment, but something in her expression had changed. The uncle, whose name turned out to be Derek Booker, 29, a line cook at a restaurant 3 blocks from the courthouse who'd brought Elliot along because he couldn't find a sitter, had finally noticed his nephew was gone. He found Elliot standing near Conrad in the courthouse lobby, surrounded by men in suits, and the look on his face moved through alarm, confusion, and something that looked like it might become anger before Conrad stepped forward and explained. Derek listened. He looked at Elliot. Then he looked at Conrad. "He actually told you," Derek said. It wasn't a question. "He did," Conrad said. Very clearly, very calmly. Derek looked at his nephew with an expression that Conrad recognized, the particular look of someone realizing they've underestimated a person they see every day. Elliot was sitting on a bench near the lobby information desk, eating the granola bar that Britt had produced from somewhere in her bag, his feet swinging a few inches off the floor. Detective Flores returned 40 minutes later. She pulled Conrad aside. "The tattoo," she said. "Your witness's description matches someone already in our system. We're following up." Conrad looked over at Elliot, who had finished his granola bar and was now watching the elevator doors open and close with the focused attention of someone conducting a study. "He's 6 years old," Conrad said. "Yes, sir," Flores said, "and he gave us more than most adults do." She paused. "We're going to need him and his family to come in formally, if you could help facilitate." "Whatever you need," Conrad said. By the time the dust settled, Statements given, media kept away, Saul interviewed separately. The Lincoln towed to an impound lot where a police tech could go over every inch of it. It was after 4 in the afternoon. The October light had gone thin and low. Conrad sat in his firm's conference room on the 14th floor with a cup of coffee going cold in front of him, and his phone full of missed calls he hadn't answered yet. His partners, a reporter, his daughter. He called Pam first. She answered on the first ring. "Dad, I've been trying to reach you for 2 hours. What happened? There's something on the news." "I'm fine," he said. "Everything's fine." A pause. "You don't sound fine." "I am." He was quiet for a moment. "Someone warned me, a little boy. He saw something and he came and told me, and I listened." There was a long silence on Pam's end. "How old?" she said finally. "About Rosie's age." Another silence. Then quietly, "Dad, I know," he said. He asked her to tell Rosie he'd call this weekend. He asked how her husband's back was doing. He asked about things that were ordinary and true and solid, because he needed to hear them. After he hung up, he sat for a long time. Then he called his assistant and asked her to find contact information for a woman named Lorraine Booker, currently a patient at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, recovering from a hip replacement. Admitted 4 days ago, his assistant called back in 8 minutes. She was good. Lorraine Booker had a room on the 5th floor with a window that looked out over a parking structure, and if you angled yourself right, a narrow slice of lake. She was 67 years old. She had worked at an auto shop for 11 years in her 30s, raised 2 sons, mostly alone after her husband left, and now lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Englewood with her younger son, Derek. And, on alternating weeks, her grandson, Elliot, whose mother worked nights at a fulfillment warehouse in Joliet. Conrad had not called ahead. He'd simply come. The nurse at the floor station had looked at him with polite suspicion. He'd explained. Not who he was, exactly, but why he was there. She'd gone in to check. She'd come back and told him Mrs. Booker said to send him in. Lorraine was sitting up in the bed when he came in. She was a small woman, sharp-featured, with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that assessed him completely in about 2 seconds. She had the TV muted and a word search book open in her lap, though she wasn't looking at it anymore. Elliot was asleep in the chair beside her bed. He'd curled into it sideways, his head against one armrest, his too-big jacket draped over him like a blanket. His sneakers were on the floor, neatly paired. Conrad stopped just inside the doorway. "Mrs. Booker," he said quietly. "Mr. Hale," she said. She had a voice like gravel wrapped in cotton. She looked at him carefully. "Derek called and told me what happened." A pause. "And what Elliot did." "He saved my life," Conrad said. It was the first time he'd said it out loud. It felt enormous. "He saw something, and he made sure I knew, and because of that, I'm standing here." Lorraine was quiet for a moment. She looked at her grandson sleeping in the chair. There was something in her face that Conrad had no words for, some deep private pride that belonged only to her. "He's always been like that," she said. "Watches everything, remembers everything." She looked back at Conrad. "His mother worries it makes him seem strange. I told her it'll make him great." Conrad looked at the boy sleeping in the chair, the jacket rising and falling with his breath, the sneakers on the floor, neatly paired. "I'd like to do something for your family," Conrad said. "If you'll allow it." Lorraine's expression didn't change, but her chin came up slightly. "We don't take charity." "I'm not offering charity," Conrad said. "I'm offering a debt payment. There's a difference." He paused. "Your grandson gave me my life back today. I'd like to help give him something in return." A long silence. "What did you have in mind?" Lorraine asked. He told her. The physical therapy that Medicare didn't cover, he'd cover it. A specialist she'd been putting off seeing because of the cost. He had a contact at Northwestern who owed him a favor, and that favor was worth more than money. For Elliot's mother, he had an opening at his firm for a day-shift administrative position. If she wanted it, real benefits, real hours, a chance to sleep at night. For Elliot himself, Conrad had gotten on the phone that afternoon with the director of a private school on the North Side, where he sat on the board of trustees, a school with a scholarship program for exceptional students, a school that had, in Conrad's private opinion, been underusing that program for years. He'd already made the call. He told Lorraine all of it quietly, without flourish, the way you tell someone something true. When he finished, the room was silent except for the low hum of hospital machines and the distant sound of a cart moving down the hallway. Lorraine looked at him for a long moment. "Elliot doesn't know yet," she said. "No, I thought you should hear it first." She nodded slowly. She looked down at her word search book. She smoothed one corner of the page with her thumb, a small unconscious gesture. "He was scared," she said quietly. "He didn't tell me until Derek called, but I could hear it when Derek described it." Elliot was scared, and he did it anyway. Conrad thought of a 7-year-old boy sitting alone on courthouse steps, watching for the right man to come down, deciding whether to speak. "The best courage always is," he said. Lorraine didn't say anything for a moment. Then she looked up. You can come back tomorrow, she said. He'll be awake. He'd probably like to know what happens next. Conrad nodded. He looked once more at the boy in the chair. This small, serious person who had watched a man go under a car for too long, and decided that the right thing to do was to find the man the car belonged to and tell him the truth. He thought of his granddaughter in Cincinnati. He thought of what he would tell her this weekend, about a boy named Elliot who kept his laces neat and his eyes open and walked up to a stranger in a suit because someone had to. He thought of all the times in his life that he had been so certain he was the smartest person in the room. He picked up his briefcase. "Tell him," Conrad said quietly, "that I'll see him tomorrow." He walked back out into the hallway, past the nurse's station, into the elevator, and down through the lobby with its polished floors and the smell of antiseptic and the ordinary noise of a hospital doing its ordinary work. Outside, the October air had gone cold. The sun was nearly down. The city moved around him the way it always did, indifferent and enormous and full of things you'd miss if you weren't paying attention. Conrad Hale stood on the sidewalk for a moment, his briefcase in his hand, and breathed. Then he walked on.